Hey, it's Matt Moscona. You found it. It's AFR Saints, your home for daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Please subscribe, smash the like button, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And our content this football season is presented by BetUS. Score a 150% bonus on your first deposit and a 125% bonus on your next two deposits up to $2,000 when you use the promo code YouTube150. Enjoy the video. Who dat? With the New Orleans Saints, we're focusing so much on Kellen Moore building his staff and what they're going to do in free agency, what they're going to do with Derek Carr, so many giant question marks, that the franchise tag is sort of an ancillary piece of this roster. But here today, Tuesday, the ability for teams to use the franchise tag designation opened, that window opened. And so I'd be remiss if we didn't at least talk about it. First, if you're not familiar, the franchise tag effectively is a tool that allows you. I know probably a lot of you understand it, but let me just explain for maybe those of you that don't. The franchise tag is a tool that allows teams to retain their free agent talent without committing to them long term. Now, it's very expensive, but it allows you to keep your better players without making the long-term investment. Think of it as renting as opposed to buying. Like, if you go rent a house, a lot of times it costs you more per month to rent than your mortgage would if you buy a house with a 30-year mortgage, right? But you're locked into a 30-year mortgage as opposed to you have a lease where if it's monthly or whatever, you can get out of it. So that's kind of the purpose of a franchise tag. For the New Orleans Saints, and by the way, the value of the franchise tag is the average salaries, the average contracts of the top 5 players at that position over the previous 5 years, or 120% of your previous contract, whichever number is higher. But basically, it's generally always going to be the average of the top 5 salaries the previous 5 years. And it goes by position. So if you look at the players that are free agents for the New Orleans Saints this year, I really think there's only 3. There's only 3 that you would even consider, like that we would even entertain the conversation about using the franchise tag. It's Chase Young, Juwan Johnson, and Paulson Adebo. Now, I'll be very clear before I go any further. I do not think the Saints should, and I do not think the Saints will use the franchise tag for any of these players. Okay, but just for the sake of having this conversation, we'll get right back to the video. But did you know that BetUS also has a casino? For all of our followers here, if you like slots or live casino dealers, you can take advantage of BetUS amazing sign-up bonuses. 200% sign-up bonus up to $5,000 or 250% for crypto sign-up bonus up to $5,000 as well. Discover the BetUS Casino Playground. Maybe you're a slots enthusiast. BetUS, they've got the games to raise your pulse. You can test your skills with timeless classics. You can also explore the newest, hottest slots and feel that casino buzz with BetUS live dealer tables. Y'all take advantage of this great special. Sign up now. Get 200% sign-up bonus up to $5,000 and 250% sign-up bonus up in crypto up to $5,000. So get ready for a rush with the BetUS Casino generous promotions and tournaments that make every play more rewarding. Sign up right now and experience the difference. Get your bonus. 200% sign-up bonus up to $5,000 and 250% crypto sign-up bonus also up to $5,000. Now, enjoy the rest of the video. Chase Young, the franchise tag price this year for a defensive end is $24.7 million. So if the Saints wanted to franchise tag Chase Young, it would cost them $24.7 million. For Paulson Adebo, the franchise tag number for a cornerback is $20.3 million. And for a tight end, if they wanted to franchise tag Juwan Johnson, that number is $14.2 million. Overthecap.com, for example, looks at metrics and numbers and all that and puts together a valuation, a projected valuation for each player. So I told you Chase Young, if they wanted to franchise tag him, that value would be $24.7 million. Over the Cap estimates Chase Young's valuation at $13 million. So you're talking $11 million more than his valuation. Juwan Johnson, his valuation at $6 million. And Paulson Adebo, his valuation at $1.2 million. Remember, Adebo's coming off the really devastating leg fracture, which, God, it sucks for Paulson Adebo. I'm super sympathetic there. I mean, this is a guy that was in his contract year going into free agency, has been a starter, has been a good player for you. And in his contract year, he suffers a broken leg, and it effectively just neuters his free agency value. I just told you, like, the franchise tag for a cornerback would be $20.3 million. Over the Cap estimates Paulson Adebo's value at $1.2 million average annual value. So that sucks. I mean, just sucks for Paulson Adebo. You know, I think so I do not think the Saints are even going to entertain the franchise tag. The last time they used it was for Marcus Williams back in 2021. So it's been 5 years or 4 years even since the Saints used the franchise tag. I think the bigger question is, do you have the opportunity to retain those three players I just mentioned in free agency? And there's a couple of factors. Number one, you got to clear up your cap situation to get within cap compliance and free up enough money to where you can afford to sign your free agents. That's one. Number two, what is the market for these players? Like, are you going to have to get into a bidding war for these players and have somebody outbid you in theory? And then number three is, like, do they want to come back? Or do you want to come back and be part of what is a perceived rebuild, or do you want to go try to win? Now, you have three relatively young players there with Young, Johnson, and Adebo that I don't think any of them feel like they're staring at the light at the end of their tunnel of their career, and it's getting brighter. But, I mean, it's also odd to think, the Saints have missed the playoffs for 4 consecutive years now. So, are you wanting to hang around and keep missing the playoffs when you've never tasted that? Regardless of what we all perceive the success of this franchise to have been over the last 2 decades, the recent history is Saints aren't a playoff team. They've made the playoffs in 4 years. If I look at each of them individually, Young, Johnson, and Adebo, I think Chase Young is going to have a very healthy market. The question for Chase Young through his first 4 years in the NFL had been, can he stay healthy? He was healthy as a rookie. He was healthy a year ago, and he was very productive. The middle 2 years, when he suffered injuries, it became more complex. He played all 17 games in New Orleans this year, one of the league leaders in quarterback hurries, played 17 games and 5.5 sacks. He showed he could stay healthy and be a productive player at creating pressures off the edge. There's going to be a market for Chase Young. He said he's open to returning to New Orleans, but is New Orleans able? Like, one thing it's so odd with the Saints because this is a team that the way they spend and the way they structure and then restructure is so fiscally irresponsible. It's counterintuitive that an organization that is so fiscally irresponsible with how they structure and restructure deals, like, has hard and fast limits on what they'll spend on their free agents, right? Like, whenever Mark Ingram left New Orleans for Baltimore, we learned that the difference in the contract ended up being just a couple $100,000, like something so negligible. But, like, they had their number, they weren't going over. So chances are with a guy like Chase Young, where he has a market, the Saints are going to have their number, they're not going to go over. My guess is some other team will. It's interesting about Juwan Johnson because we always kind of had this perception that he had kind of quote-unquote disappointing season. But in a year where Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Taysom Hill, all were injured, Juwan Johnson was your top pass catcher this year. He caught 50 balls for 548 yards to go along with 3 touchdowns. Now, Juwan Johnson met with reporters about a month ago and talked about his sort of impending free agency and what he was looking at.
It is interesting, but I feel like the biggest thing is just embracing what I have now. I mean, I've been here for 5 years, undrafted guy, seeing a lot of people come and go. I think the biggest thing is just enjoying what I have here with the guys that I have. Honestly, you never know how it looks next year. People go different places. I may go different places. You just never know. It's the business. It's just what it is.
It's an interesting way to look at it. You remember that was a guy who went to Penn State, transferred to Oregon, was a receiver, came to New Orleans, was a big-bodied receiver. They converted him to tight end, and they've made it work to where he's been a productive player. He made the team as an undrafted rookie free agent and has been a productive player for the New Orleans Saints. However, my hope for Juwan Johnson, the human, and look, I mean, since he's been here, Juwan and his wife got married. They very publicly chronicled their journey through their attempts to become pregnant and then having their child born. They've been very public about that on social media. I'm sure there's an emotional tie to the city and the franchise and everything that it's been. The other part of that is, man, like you may only hit free agency once in your career, where you're a young veteran and you have value, and you have to maximize it. So I wouldn't blame Juwan Johnson one bit if he went and tested the market and cashed out to whatever the highest degrees. And maybe that's in New Orleans. It'd be great if he's back. He wants to be here. That's awesome. But I also wouldn't fault the guy if at this point in his life, he said, look, this may be my one shot at signing my biggest contract. I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't go at least see what the market would bear. And then there's Paulson Adebo, who, as we talked about, it just sucks for him, man. That was a guy that opted out during the COVID year, slipped a little in the draft as a result. Saints pulled the trigger. He's been a starting player for New Orleans ever since he came into the league, and he just had this devastating injury in his contract year. So where does that leave him? It probably mutes the market a bit for him. And if that's the case, that may end up being to the Saints' benefit. And, I know we've talked a lot about Paulson Adebo and his issue with penalties, things like that, since he's been in New Orleans. But when I look at what you have with Alontae Taylor, who I don't know that he's a boundary corner in the NFL, and Kool-Aid McKinstry, who used a second-round pick on a year ago and played a lot for you out of necessity, both at slot and boundary corner. Like, I don't know if Taylor and Kool-Aid are guys that can be boundary corners. We know Paulson Adebo can be that. I'm not saying he's an all-pro, but he's a starting cornerback in the NFL. And that injury may end up being to the Saints' benefit if you end up getting Adebo on what amounts to a bargain basement deal as a result of him seeing his market evaporate because of the injury. It would suck if it happened that way, but it might be to the Saints' benefit. So, again, franchise tag window is open. I cannot see a reality where the Saints use it, but the three players that are going into free agency that you would love to have back in some way if it would work: Chase Young, Juwan Johnson, Paulson Adebo. We'll see what the Saints are able to make work with new coach Kellen Moore. Thanks so much for watching the video. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, hit the bell so you're notified when we post a new video, and remember to support BetUS, where right now you can get a 150% bonus on your first deposit and a 125% bonus on your next two deposits up to $2,000. Be sure to use that promo code YouTube150.